6:31. We're going to get started. I want to welcome all of you. Thank you so much for joining us in the Fireside chat today. My name is Teresa Eoff. I'm president of Cal Poly Pomona's Black Alumni Friends, alumni from 2003. My major was business administration and entrepreneurship. And we're so happy that Barbara Bouza was willing to join us today for this fireside chat. I know it's been a long work day for a lot of people, a long school day for our students, and it's a Friday night, and we're used to doing so much on a Friday night. So thank you all for being here. Thank you so much to Disney Imagineering for supporting the event, and everyone from Disney who's on with us tonight. All of the community members from Cal Poly Pomona, all of the alumni who have joined, the students, administrators, just thank you so much. We appreciate the support. So we have an amazing student by the name of Kevin Black, who is going to be interviewing tonight. He is a gender, ethnic, multicultural studies major. He has some very lofty goals, and we're supporting him and rooting him on. He's going to be speaking to our beautiful guest, Barbara Bouza. She is the Disney Imagineering president of Business Operations, Design, and Delivery. So we're going to welcome them both. Thank you all for joining us. And Kevin, if you're ready, you can take over.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. As she said, my name is Kevin. I am a junior at Cal Poly Pomona. My major is gender, ethnic, and multicultural studies, and I have the pleasure of interviewing the lovely Barbara Bouza. Hello, Barbara.
Hi, good evening. I know, it's a late Friday night for students, but it's just great to be back speaking with everyone at Cal Poly Pomona, and really great to meet you, Kevin.
Really great. So, Barbara, I have a few questions here to ask. So, the first question I would love to ask you is, where did this all start? I want to know.
So, I'm an architect, but, it wasn't really probably until I was in about high school. Grew up in Santa Maria, California, so Central Coast, actually very close to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And really in high school, I had always this affinity for art and anything creative. And I saw that they had an architecture program and took that, didn't really understand what architecture meant or what it was, didn't have any, necessarily role models in that, and just absolutely fell in love with it. And so, fast forward from there, unlike I think students today, you apply to multiple schools. I applied to a couple of schools, and Cal Poly Pomona was one of them. I was so fortunate to be accepted, and that was really the kickstart of the career 5-year program. I know it's still going really strong, and at the time it was very impactful. So meaning they accepted more students than probably could stick with the whole program, but after the first year, after you can make it through the first year, you're in good shape.
Well, we are lucky to have you as an alumni. Thank you. I just want to know, is there any mentors or anybody that really helped you be who you are today?
Like many people, right? I have a lot of people I've looked up to, whether it's, family or colleagues. Just like Violet, I got a chance to listen to her interview, and boy, she's was so impressive. But I think similar to her, right? My parents were a big influence on my life. Really allowed me to choose what I wanted to do. I felt like I had that freedom, and I think that sometimes that's always a tough for a parent to just say, hey, do what you want to do. But I think they saw the passion that I had for design and architecture, and I just followed that. So, but in terms of mentorship, it's a question I get a lot, and it's incredibly important for people. And separate from my day job, I'm also on the board of Imaginella, and that's a nonprofit where our focus is around really putting a stop to the cycle of family homelessness and poverty. And really the main thing that we focus on is this idea about mentors. And so even at that level, everybody in the family that we serve, everybody 5 years and up has a peer-to-peer mentor. And I think it's really about that, building the relationship and having that opportunity to have somebody that you can call on no matter what's going on. And so, this idea about having a mentor whether it's somebody younger, somebody older, a colleague, a family member, is just incredibly important. Kevin, I don't know if I lost you. Maybe just to, and Kevin, go ahead and interrupt me. I think you might have just dropped off for a second. I think we all can appreciate, especially on a Friday night, right? In this Zoom world, we're all on Zoom, whether you're a student or whether you're in the office. And, we were just joking just before this call, right? We're gonna have family members might come in, or young kids or pets. And, I think we've all learned to just be really tolerant, and it's okay, right? It's okay. Sometimes you lose your connection. Sometimes we're talking, but we've been on mute for the last minute. And, we've just learned it was, interesting as I compare working in an office. We're so used to so many people around. And now that we're home, we all kind of said, hey, I don't want anybody in the camera with me. But now, it's okay. So I know right before we came on, I know Kevin was having some challenges with his internet, but I just want to make sure he's still on to.
Yeah, and I can jump in until he comes back.
Okay.
Okay. I'm here.
That's okay.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know what happened. I just saw it like all closed. I was like, whoa, okay. No, all right.
This is the life we live in right now.
Okay. I have another question for you. Sure. So how did you get your start at Walt Disney Engineering?
So at Walt Disney Imagineering, I just joined, believe it or not, just June of last year. So literally right during the middle of the pandemic. And, when I was speaking with Disney, previously with another company, it's interesting because at the time, just before June, obviously, all the theme parks were closed, all the movies were not being shot, there were no sports being played, there were no cruises. And so you kind of look at all the different lines of area that, Disney, specifically Imagineering, works in. And just to step back, Imagineering, we do design all of the, creative and physical experiences for the theme parks, the cruises, the resorts, and, even an island. And so when you kind of look at that, it's like, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? What am I thinking? But it's been, and then kind of, a few months after the pandemic kind of started, some of the theme parks started to open up, in Asia, in Orlando, and certain other parts just started to, come back. But it's just been a fascinating time. So, I came in really eyes wide open, knowing that this is an opportunity. Disney can make an incredible impact. Definitely a company I grew up really being admiring the creativity, but at the same time thinking, wow, we're going to have to pivot like everybody else, right? So this idea of coming into Disney, I haven't even been there a year yet, but absolutely love it. And I think stay tuned for how we can kind of begin to reinvent some of those experiences.
Wow, thank you. How many shifts in your career did you make before you really reached to where you are right now? What were they?
It's kind of similar to Violet, right? I don't think I made any like drastic shifts. Like I said, starting from high school, I have the sense that, I love the idea of designing physical spaces. So that kind of led me to architecture, and, and then studying work. I did have an opportunity, a husband and I, who's also a Cal Poly grad and an architect. We decided, what, let's try something different. We moved to London. We were just going to go a year and ended up staying 3.5 years. And it was just fascinating to, work with other, in another country, working metric, which in some ways is simpler, but if you didn't grow up that way, it was a challenge, but incredibly exciting. I would say maybe my biggest shift is coming to Disney, right? So, and even for me, I initially thought, okay, it's an entertainment company, theme parks, my background maybe is a little different. And I think what got me so excited was the fact that, not to put myself in a box, right? It's really about this idea about you can create all sorts of experiences. And I've always loved working with collaborative teams of multidisciplines. So I think that's giving me that opportunity to, whether it's people in engineering or storytellers or music or construction. And at the end of the day, if you look at a theme park, it really is a city. It is really a series of spaces and activities and ideas. And I love working globally, really having that influence. And, an area that we're really pushing into is also make sure not everybody can get to a theme park or go on a cruise. How do we create experiences that are right there in the community that anybody can have access to? It's just incredibly important. So that was a bit of my shift, I guess, Kevin.
Yeah.
So
Yes, thank you. What would you say your work so far as
oh, I'm sorry, say that again.
I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, no worries. No worries. Maybe just repeat the question.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry, everyone. Yeah. Would you say that so far Disney has really shown you what it really means to have boundless creativity?
Yeah, because I think when you, and this is, I think, for any student, right? You study a profession, and I think you immediately think, like, if you study architecture, I'm going to go work for an architect. Or if I study, mechanical engineering, I'm going to work for a mechanical engineer. And I think what Disney has shown me is that there's a lot of different areas, a lot of different backgrounds that you can create that really, I think there's an opportunity for anyone, right? So I that's really opened my eyes. And now that I'm, when I meet with students, and I know a number of them now might study one profession and end up working, at multiple types of companies. And so I think that's the one thing I always try to tell students is, don't worry about, just get the education, right? Get your degree. That's incredibly important. The opportunities once you graduate are wide open. And you may want to say, I'm going to do a few years very literal to my profession, whether it's medicine or something else, but the opportunity to then apply that in other ways. I would just say, keep an open mind, build those relationships. But and again, that just got reinforced as I've joined Disney. I don't know if you can hear me, Kevin.
And you said that you believe there are opportunities for, if you don't mind me asking. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know why my Wi-Fi is being so wonky right now. Oh my gosh. Okay. You said that there are opportunities for everyone. What are one or two things that you did in your life that helped you open your doors to Disney and land you this amazing job?
Well, I would say, since it's so recent, it's probably more recent experience, but, I think it's, keeping that open mind, right? Some people might thought, during a pandemic, why would anybody take on a new opportunity or explore it, right? Sometimes it's during the pandemic, I think a lot of people, or a lot of us have said, oh my God, I'm just gonna hunker down, just plus we all know that, right? A lot of people did lose jobs over this pandemic or health issues, and there's been a lot of disruption, a lot of political unrest. But I thought, for me, the opportunity to, like I said, make a big impact, really maybe push myself, challenge. And so it was kind of an opportunity that came along, and I felt like, maybe a once in a life opportunity. If I didn't do this opportunity, somebody needed to. And so, I'm excited of what it's brought me. But I think the message really is no matter what you do kind of throughout, whether you're a student or through your career, no matter how small, of maybe a skill set or a project you work on, or maybe it's a part-time job at some point that doesn't even seem, when I was at Cal Poly, I worked part-time at Taco Bell for a while. and I swear I invented the taco salad, but I can't take credit for it. But that's it was, again, you can always sort of create these innovations, and all those things you begin to apply down the line, even to this day. So I think the message I have for especially students is, and people early in their careers is, embrace every opportunity. If somebody reaches out to you for an opportunity, take advantage of it, do it. And again, it doesn't matter how small or have you think it's insignificant, you'll always go back on it during the time.
Wow, that was a great answer. That was good. Wow. Why did you pick Cal Poly Pomona?
It's interesting because back when I was looking for college, I wasn't as venturous as I see a lot of students today, applying for 10, 15 colleges, right? The same with my kids, and going around the country. As I mentioned, I grew up in Santa Maria. So Cal Poly San Luis Obispo was actually our local school. And so, but being an architecture, I said, what, I feel like I needed to go closer to Los Angeles, closer to a bigger city, just get a different experience. And I do think that's healthy when you go off to college. So I applied to Cal Poly Pomona, and then also looked at Berkeley, but they, said, well, maybe you could start in the summer program. And San Luis, they were still figuring stuff out. In Cal Poly, there was like no strings attached. You're accepted. So I thought, what, I'm going to go where I wanted and I felt like that ended up becoming a really, really great fit. Coming from a small town, small high school, didn't know anybody at Cal Poly Pomona when I started. But I have to say, I lived in the dorms, walked around campus, got to know the area, the community, met so many great friends, people that I still see and talk to today. And I think it was just the right scale for me, the right culture. I have to say, I was also impressed with the Rose Float. Like, that was one of the first things that I saw, and I didn't do so much with it. But again, that was something that I grew up kind of watching. And so it was just these little touch points that were that attracted me to Cal Poly Pomona.
And I'm a transfer student myself. So as a transfer student, I completely understand the aspect of going to a new area, new space that's really foreign to you, where you don't have anybody there.
Yeah.
So I really relate to that. I thank you. Someone asked a question in the chat. They said, do you remember your first day on campus?
Oh, do I remember my first day? Okay, so I think that.
What was that like? Was it like scary your first day on campus, or was it like, oh wow, I'm here?
Probably a little both. I think I had come once before to an orientation. I think that was the only time I'd ever been to the campus. And then the first couple of days, I seem to remember, moved into the dorms. Like I said, I didn't know anybody. I'm going to be with a roommate I've never met in my life. And, parents helped, family helped me move in, and then they left. And then I'll remember, I think there was a barbecue, and, and it was just one by one, you get somebody. And what was nice about living on campus the first year was, you're sharing meals together. You just can't help but get to know people. I think the dorms do a good job of trying to create this community, because you are getting students from all over the place, and this is their first time together. And for many people, first time they've left, maybe where they grew up. And so I feel that, on one hand, studying in the university, obviously you want to build an expertise and go out and get a career. But I really believe half of the importance of it is building the relationships and being a part of a community, because when you go out to work afterwards, that is almost as important. Being able to communicate, being able to work alongside people from different backgrounds, right? So we're all these 18-year-olds put together in different backgrounds, and it's like, of course, there's a lot we have in common just by being at that stage. But, so I think it was scary, but probably for an hour or two. then as soon as you start to meet people in the same boat, it's, you have something to connect. So I really, that my first impression was really positive.
Well, that's great. I transferred during COVID, so I've never been on campus. So hearing that, that gives me some relief. Thank you.
Have you never been on the campus? Just go
never
drive.
been on the campus, but I go to college here. So what building or structure in California would you say best describes your architecture style?
Well, I think for me, I've always, I guess I have a preference for very kind of clean, simple design. And some people say, oh my God, but at Disney, it's anything but just clean and simple. And I think that's what I love so much, right? And I think it's more the idea about something being timeless, and then you can build upon it and you can add more to it. And whether it's personal or whether it's tying it more to what you design in the community, I think that's the part that I find design very personal. A project that I worked on, or I was with the Gensler design firm, and a big project that office had before I joined Disney was the LA Football Club Stadium. So you might be familiar with it, just south of downtown. And I think that project for me was, just incredible. Really, the team did a phenomenal job. But I think what was so important was the fact that it was really designed for the sports fan and designed for the community. And so a lot of the input, if you back to the design process, there was this outreach to people in the community and people that were just these major fans of the team. This was a brand new team, so we were already designing stadium before they even had all the players. And to be able to say, no, let's get that input. How do you want to experience this? How do you want to do that? And I think it just what you see there now, and if you back when the stadium's open again, participate in a game there, it really, a lot of what's there is reflects feedback that came from people, not just the architects, not just the engineers, not just the city planners, right? It was just every day that say this is something that's important to me, and I felt like that. So that's just one example for building in LA.
Yeah. Wow. So Sophia Destins, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that last name. Sophia Destins in the chat actually have a question. So she said, being a woman with such an important position in a big company, how have you felt with the stress from the pandemic and how it affects your coworkers and peers?
Yeah, I think a couple of things on that. I think that obviously the pandemic has impacted everybody, right? Men, women, but I'm seeing specifically with women, I think a lot of us have read that just the amount that are dropping out of the workforce. And so, and I think if you take it, look at it, right? Trying to work in the home, people are trying to have their children participate in school in the home, and you've got sometimes the kitchen table is at the school or is at the office, and it's just, I think that has played, from what I've seen, a lot more stress on women. Not that it doesn't impact everybody, but I think that's what we've seen, and we've seen actually larger numbers of women leaving the workforce versus men, and so there's something there. And I feel like for my role as a leader, again, the budgets are tighter, right? Everybody's looking at that. The schedules are stressed because projects stopped or went on hold. There was just a lot of dynamics. I talked to a lot of my colleagues and just other dynamics, right? So you're trying to, conduct business, but in a social distance way. And how does the technology work, right? How do you do that? It's all these challenges. And so I feel it's really important that we make sure that everybody's well-being is number one, and really a focus along that line, because at the end of the day, that's what you can't make up for. And so, I've told our teams, keep your radar up. If you feel like people are overstressed, it's okay to turn your camera off, if you just don't feel like being on that 7 a.m. call. And I think the other thing I've noticed is, we used to, many of us would commute. I'd work downtown, and you take that time. And now, as meetings get set earlier, I used to say, oh good, I'm going to gain that time back, or that time I don't have to commute on a Friday night. Like normally I'd be driving out to Pomona, right? And I'd be like a 2-hour drive in the traffic on a Friday. But the beauty is we've gained that time, but I think what's happening is it's getting filled up with one Zoom call after another Zoom call. And so I think for me, really trying to make sure that, the women feel supported, everybody feels supported, but I am seeing that extra stress there. So hopefully that answered that.
I believe, and I hope Sophia Dessens agrees with me. I think that was a good answer. Yeah. And I do want to say, as someone who has researched the disparities of high stress between men and women, I would absolutely agree with you. It does bear a lot more on women. That's what the research has seen. That's what it has always historically been. So I would 100% agree with you. Absolutely.
Just tell people hang in there. Hang in there.
Yeah. And I have a question, and then I'll get back to the questions in the chat. Have you been to campus since the new buildings were
before the pandemic, I came out and participated in some design studios. So I'm thinking when that was, probably in the last couple of years, probably since. But yeah, so campus looks good.
Yeah. So you've seen the new dorms or the new student services building that looks kind of like a spaceship?
Yeah, no, I remember that. I love the new student services building. Really, really impressive building. I think very sustainable, really leading edge architecture and design, and I think very great space for the students. So I don't know what happened to the old. That definitely was not what the student center looked like when I was there, but just a really great piece. And I would say actually that is probably my favorite building on the campus, but I haven't actually gone through it. I haven't had a tour of it. I was there, it was just finishing, I think, construction. And then I haven't been back there since, obviously, the pandemic.
Okay. And you said you haven't really been there to see it?
I saw it when it was under construction, but I haven't been inside. I haven't toured it yet.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't either. Haven't been on campus. But from the pictures I've seen, it looks really, really nice. So hopefully we could go together, go look at it, talk about the architecture. Looks great. So Lily Deneen, I hope I pronounced that right, Lily.
Let me look at the chat, see if I see
She actually has a question for you too. She's asking any advice for people interested in working for Disney?
I would say, yeah, definitely. I would say stay curious and inspired. I think there's a lot of opportunities with Disney. I would say that over just this past year, I think it was like most companies over the pandemic, we're just how some of our parks are still closed, right? So those here in Southern California know that Disneyland is still closed. Hoping that's going to, open up this summer. We're looking at some really interesting ideas in terms of at least the retail and the food and beverage. So, I think as things start to improve over this year with, the vaccine, parks opening, I think the opportunities will come. But I always say, it's always just, stay in touch, always kind of keep an eye on what's going on. And, I would say, at least from a Cal Poly perspective, Cal Poly is what's great is there's so many different majors and so many of them can apply. So whether you're in the, the hotel restaurant management business major or engineering or, graphics, there's so many different opportunities. So I'm hoping that, as things kind of settle down from the pandemic and the economy, definitely it's amazing opportunity for people. So just kind of keep an eye out on the website. I don't know if there's any posted specifically right now. Also, there's other aspects of Disney, right? We've got the work we do, part of the company, which is Lucasfilms and Marvel and Pixar and Disney Plus. And if you really want to get a good sense of what Imagineering is, that's the area that I'm in. There's just a great documentary on Disney Plus called The Imagineering Story. And it really takes back from when Walt had the idea about saying, think tank, and how do you really create physical experiences? The movies kind of end, right? But how do you take that experience, how do you bring those experiences to life? How do you create the stories, and how do you let the stories continue to evolve over time? And so it's just a great series that really gives you the heart and the culture of Disney Imagineering.
Yeah, that was great. And I'm looking at the chat, and I love these questions coming in. You guys are asking some really good questions. Pravina Alti, she asked, how did you adjust to your first design job after college?
Yes. Yeah, I think, when you're in school or in college, lots of times the work is very theoretical. And actually, I think that's a good thing. You get to learn to dream and come up with big ideas, and nobody's expecting you to build the building you're doing when you're a student or whatever profession. But I think the adjustment is then when you go get a job, it's the real world, right? You got a client that's paying for the work you do, or every line you draw actually means something, and it's not just the theoretical necessary. So it's just important to I think for me that big shift was going from a very kind of conceptual thinking to, oh wait, now it's reality. But I enjoyed it, right? Because there was something also about seeing things, somebody's actually paying for this. Wow, somebody wants to hire us to do something, right? We're not just talking about it, we're actually creating. And you start to really see the importance of other roles and professionals. And when you go in the work environment, you're not just around a bunch of 18 through 23-year-olds, right? You are now in a work environment that might have people from early 20s through, very, at any age now, right? There's no limit. And so, and that's really great, because you work people that have been with a company for 2 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And it's just great to have that. So I felt, for me, that was the first time I was treated like a peer, an adult. I might have been younger, less experienced, but you're just communicating with, people from all different backgrounds and ages and experiences. And so that, for some people, that's a bit of a shock, but it's ultimately, it's a really, really rewarding experience.
You honestly, you are so inspiring. Can I just say that? Like, you wow. I'm like hearing all your answers. I'm like, I need to take some notes. Like, wait.
But I was just after watching Violet, and it was so casual, and she was so fun, and I loved her energy. And my God, it's like when she talks about, repping at the Final Four in the NBA, it's just awesome. But it's just, Cal Poly is just a wealth of really, really interesting people. But I think at the same time, pretty easygoing, right? It's just a great community. But thank you, appreciate that.
Yes. So someone else asked in the chat. They said, when you entered your career, did you know that Black women only made up less than 1% of the career field?
Well, it's interesting, because growing up, it never even, not saying it shouldn't have, but it didn't really occur to me early on in my career that, you're African American, you're less percentage of the total population. So to me, it seemed natural that it's gonna be less percentage of any profession. And it wasn't until, practicing and, really, mentoring a lot of other women and people of color that, I kind of looked around and I said, wow, and, the stat, maybe that's what you're referring to, which is, there's about 120,000 licensed architects in the United States, but of African American women, there's 500 and some. So it's like about 0.4%. So again, it's, being part of a profession where I only make up not even 1%. And so I think that, having that program or engineering programs at Cal Poly is incredibly important, because for most people, it's not even a career you would even consider. And so for me, I just purely coincidence, very lucky that my high school I just happened to be scrolling for an elective and I saw it. And that's really what got me going. And I think LA Unified School District is doing a good job of really trying to put some other early programs within the school, because part of it is just exposure. And actually, you reminded me, so as part of the American Institute of Architects, we've started a nonprofit called Architecture for Communities Los Angeles. And it's really about bringing the idea of design into the community. So you might be, and to know that everybody can have an impact or an influence. And so, if you're a kid in elementary school, I want you to be able to say, wow, I could actually have an impact on the design of my school and the safety of my school. And why isn't there more green space? And so the idea is to really reach out to the community and to those, probably focus on K through 12 students. And so I think I'm really passionate about anywhere where we can do a touch point of, exposing different professions, different ideas. And I think that's where we can make the biggest impact.
Thank you. And I just want to bridge off of that. So a real hidden figure, Norma Merrick. Oh, I'm going to mispronounce her name. Scleric. What does that name really mean to you?
Well, I remember, I think when I graduated, she was one of the, I think, few African-American architects, women architects that I heard of. And she actually had her own firm, partnered with a couple other women, a very talented firm. And I didn't really know her personally, but I just knew of, being a lot of first. And, being, I think, at a VP or very senior level, and also large firms that she'd worked with. She did work with at LAX and other impactful projects. And I can only imagine how it was when she was working, many, many years ago, whereas compared to today, it's still very difficult. And, when I was president of American Institute of Architects here in Los Angeles, I get the honor of naming a gold medalist. And as a matter of fact, I named Norma, and this was a couple of years ago, because I still have, believe it or not, I still have the Ebony magazine article that I saw when I was in high school. I think I was in high school. And I tore it out and I found it, which it was profiling African-American women architects around the country. So I just saw pages after pages. So there was nothing to make me think, oh, I couldn't do this, right? So that was my filter when I was in high school. I'm saying, oh, I want to study architecture. Look at this. I don't know what everybody's talking about. And then, fast forward, you see like, oh, okay, they were probably the very few. And so Norma was one of those. And so when I had the opportunity to name a gold medalist here in LA, I was like, oh, I wonder what year Norma got it. And then I went through the list, and it's like, there was definitely a lot of incredibly talented architects on the list, but as you can imagine, it probably wasn't too diverse. There weren't, I probably count women on it in one hand. And I was like surprised that she wasn't on the list. She had never been received that recognition. So for me, I was really honored. And she had already passed away, but her son and his family accepted on her behalf. So that was a long answer for, but I appreciate that question.
Yeah, no, that was a great question. She is definitely an important figure when it comes to architecture. Yeah, thank you. And Brittany in the chat has a question for you. So she says that she is currently seeking a career in project management and themed entertainment with a background in engineering. So she would like to know what path would you suggest for her? She said there seems to be so many ways to go, and she just wants your insight.
Well, I think having multiple backgrounds like that, I think it's really useful, because sometimes, and I think all of those are going to apply to anything you do, and it gives more options. So I couldn't remember if one was a major, one was a minor, one was a focus, but throughout my career, right, I started in much more in design. I ended up doing much more project management. I really liked that side of working with clients. It actually, but part of it was, as my kids were starting to grow up, I felt like, oh, in project management, I can control the time of the meetings, the schedule, and it really, I just, said, hey, you can really frame these projects so they actually work well for a woman with kids, right? We don't have to have meetings at 7 a.m. I'm going to start them at 9. And, so I think no matter what kind of area you go in, I think you always are going to, back to my point, which is every opportunity, no matter how small, you have that, those are things that you're going to use down the line in your career. And so I would just encourage you, see what opportunities are out there, but the fact that you have multiple areas of expertise is actually a really good benefit. And at some point, you're going to probably dive deeper into one, though, as they kind of choose a lane, so to speak.
Thank you. And I know Brittany's probably just like, okay, that thank you, and like just like writing it down. Send me your notes, Brittany. So another person in the chat, I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I believe it's pronounced Kasay. They asked, did all the engineering classes you took at CPP really prepare you for your current career position, or was it more on hand job training?
Yeah, so I came in, in the architecture department, or the School of Environmental Design, that's what it is at Cal Poly. And so focus was architecture, but you still take general education classes, right? And electives and, all those. A lot of people say, oh, I don't want to go to architecture because you got to take a physics class, but, it's like one semester. So it was hard, but you get through it, or maybe it was a year. So I think what I loved about having that university background was the fact that I had opportunities to take classes across other majors, but definitely the focus was architecture. And so I do feel like it was a good training. So it was, you at that time, and I think it's similar, you're required to have a job, part-time job or a summer job before you graduate as part of requirements. You do get that opportunity to have some real life experience in an office. It might be just part-time, worked part-time my last year. And then, so by the time you do go out and find work, and like, unfortunately, we're kind of always the victim of is there a recession going on, or what's going on with work in general. But I would say it just sort of builds upon that. It was a great foundation, but when you come into an office, there's most firms don't have the expectation that you're going to be an expert yet. It's just a baseline. And you just get the opportunity to work on multiple projects, multiple roles. Sometimes it's just making models, sometimes it's sketching, sometimes it's just, and so the idea is if you can find that really great mentor along the way and just be patient. I would say in architecture specifically is a profession that takes a long time to achieve in. It doesn't happen overnight, but because it's a skill set. Buildings, take years, to build, to design and come up with the idea and then to finally execute it. So it's just, I think the patience is worth it if you're, willing to do that.
Yeah, that's great. Maritza in the chat also has a question kind of as a follow-up to what you're saying. So she asked, are there any summer internships or events that shaped your perspective on your career?
Let me see. Is she asking, is there any summer did I do summer internships, or is she talking about?
Like, are there any summer internships or like an event that you did regarding architecture where you were like, wow, this really changed my perspective on what architecture is?
Yeah, like I think I mentioned, I did work part-time during my last year of studying, and then also did a summer, but some early in college, like I said, I worked at Taco Bell or someplace, I had jobs that weren't designed, but I think it still teaches you the same rigor of, you need to show up on time, right? You need to follow through on your commitment. You need to be able to communicate. And so I think no matter where you end up working, that's incredibly important. So I think for me that, when you're in school, especially the transition to college, there's a lot left on you to kind of make decisions. Am I going to show up to class or I'm not, right? Am I going to do this level of project or not? And, you can see the outcomes when you start working and doing an internship. It starts to help you understand a little bit more of the expectations and, getting into that. And I think it's good. I think it's a nice balance if you can do both. So I have internships, and I think for a lot of programs, it's actually a requirement. And I think that's a good thing. And potentially doing internships maybe outside of your profession, I think can also be helpful. Yeah.
And this is actually so funny. My brother just texted me a question to ask you. He wants to know, is there any other internships or opportunities that you can think of that you may suggest to someone like, oh, there's many opportunities. This is a few. Like, are there any opportunities that you know of that students could apply to or go to?
Yeah, I think, what was unfortunate this past year, and I just saw this across the board, right? So I know when I was with Genza, we'd bring in like 40 interns every summer, maybe it was 30 or whatever. And just this past year with everybody's offices shutting down, most internships didn't really happen, right? And so again, Disney has multiple internships. So what we're doing is we're kind of reevaluating for this year, how do you do it, right? We're all working from home, and businesses, we're still trying to get up and running. But I feel like we all want to create a commitment to students, because we don't want to wake up and say, wow, we let all these students down by not providing internships or opportunities, and they're going to go off and find where they can work. So I think working with organizations, so specific to architecture, like the National Organization of Minority Architects, or whatever profession somebody's in, there's always professional arms of those organizations. They tend to also have student chapters. I think it's incredibly important to get connected in with professional organizations, because they are really working hard to match students with opportunities. At Disney, we've got some really great programs as well, Imaginations program and some others. And so the goal is, how do we make sure that we can still fill that pipeline of students? It's going to be less, it's going to be a lot less, but I think that commitment has to be, we just have to stick with that commitment. It's so worth it. So, I think check companies' websites, they tend to post it. I think typically it's to post them much earlier, and now I think a lot of companies are still trying to figure out what they're going to do this summer.
Yeah, and that's really great that so many companies, especially a company like Disney, offers opportunities to students to really learn and explore. So that's really great. I love that. So a question from, I'm so sorry if I'm going to pronounce your name wrong again, Karsten or Kirsten. She says, based on your experience, what do you think is essential for young professionals to do in the first 1 to 3 years of their engineering career?
I would say, just be a sponge, really absorb everything you're learning, because sometimes when you're early in your career, and I love the fact that we've got a lot of students on this call, and so I love these questions, because I think it's important. It sets your direction. But it's important to just come in to any place, any opportunity, with a really open mind. You may not get certain opportunities. You may say, like, why didn't they pick me for this project or not? And just say, hey, you know what, it's early in my career, I don't have a lot of experience. Maybe they're going to have me spend a week in the accounting department, but but wait a minute, I studied engineering, why am I doing that? Or a week in another group. And I tell you, those experiences are just going to always just resonate with you throughout your career, and they actually provide value later on, just in terms of, I would say, like in certain maybe design engineering professions, we probably could have a little bit more business background. We don't necessarily learn that, right? So I think in these jobs, if you get that opportunity, and I think most people are really open-minded and supportive of young professionals and students, that we want you to learn, we want you to be successful. So go in there thinking, they hired me and they brought me in because they actually want me to succeed. They want me to do well. And when it's tough, just say, hey, I don't actually understand what you need me to do here. And I can only imagine now working from home and not physically in the office, where you can kind of see what everybody's doing. And it can be very lonely working at home. That's also can be a challenge. So hopefully that helps.
Your advice and your persistence is very admirable. I want to say that. Thank you. That's especially during a time like this, hearing, keep going. It's okay. Keep pushing. That's really essential, especially to hear during a time like this. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So Shauna, she's asking, Shauna in the chat, she's asking, what can you share about your studies and experience abroad? And that she's also seen Walt Disney offer internships at Black College Expo in the past, and she's hoping that they do it again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm trying to think, there was a couple of parts to that question, right? So what was the first part? How was my studying abroad or working abroad?
Yeah, what can you share about your studies and experience abroad?
So I would say, after I graduated from Cal Poly, about 3 years afterwards, it was, started getting that, is this a good time, before we settle down, have kids and buy a house? Might be a great time to just explore another area. So my husband and I, we decided, let's go to London, let's go to Europe, kind of, why not? Somebody told us, if you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. So we're like, okay. And, just went and tried to say, let's just keep it very simple, and went over there, studied. It was interesting as a student, you can get a student visa, so we could work part-time. That was good. And it was just really opened our eyes to just, working in a different culture, working in a different area, just studying. And, if you can get that opportunity, it was a lot less expensive then. So it was worth it. And you're absolutely right. At Disney, really creating strong partnerships with as many universities as possible, but obviously also there is a need to really diversify, Imagineers and people at Disney, because what we do is we design for people, right? We design for that guest experience, and we want it to be everybody to have the opportunity to say, hey, I see myself when I go to Disneyland, right? I see myself when I look, I don't always see myself in everything, but I know that there's that representation and a real, and I don't know if you saw Soul, which came out in Christmas. I absolutely love it. I probably watched it a couple of times. I was just recently watching a documentary on Disney Plus, which was Inside Pixar, and it talked about, some of the team that worked on that, and just the level of detail they go through to create authenticity in terms of, how the clothes work, how the hair, the barbershop scene. And so I think, from an opportunity as whether you're a student or early in your career, companies really want people just to be authentic, bring your life experiences, right? I think sometimes, maybe not that many years ago, you kind of said, I got my personal life and then I got my work life. I think we've got this great moment now, and I would say it's not a moment, it's a movement, that there is a passion about, let's just bring what we know, let's just bring our true selves to work. And I think that's incredibly important, because at the end of the day, that's where the work environment is going to be really special. So I think that's the advice I would give to anybody coming in. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
But I can hear you.
I don't know why, but I can't hear anybody. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You can? No, you can't. Or you
No, I can hear you.
You can. Okay. I don't know why I can't hear you right now. Yes. Okay. Wow. Well, there is another question in the chat. It asks, did you meet your husband at Cal Poly Pomona?
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if you can hear me, so you want maybe just go by my.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Like I said, I started at Cal Poly really early on. We met, I would say, probably our first year. He was a year ahead of me, also studying architecture, and got married the year we graduated. And then, like I said, a few years later, went to London, came back. But yeah, we just both, so Cal Poly's in our blood, Cal Poly Pomona. So so definitely some benefits.
When the hearing just stopped working, I started seeing the chat coming about watching new WandaVision once we are off. It cut off. Were you talking about it? Because I honestly love that show. You weren't?
No, I wasn't talking about WandaVision, but I would say that it's a really great, and for those that are into the Marvel universe, sometimes you got to get past the first couple of episodes. But I just think it's really creative and kind of reminds me of some old TV shows. But it's cool. So it's a lot of. I think we're all watching probably way more movies and television than we probably than we've ever done. But it's a great way to get inspired and see what's being created. And you say, hey, I don't see stuff being created that resonates with me, this is your opportunity to say, hey, let me get that input. And I think that's what, we certainly are looking for, that creative talent that's just, bring ideas. Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you. Are there any final thoughts that you have before our time is up, Barbara?
No, I just, want to thank you. I know you did an excellent job. I know it's tough when your internet and you're competing with probably, your family trying to do the same thing. And that's just the world we live in now. And right, we just all have to be just patient. And, whether I'm talking to 2 people or 200 people, I just, again, I just really value my time at Cal Poly Pomona, the education. And I tell people affordable education, because I think that's something that's very tough, or at least it was affordable then, back then. And just, the commitment Cal Poly Pomona has made to the community. And, I'm just so honored to speak with you all. I know that a Friday night is so tough. And, but I just, as soon as Corey reached out, I said, absolutely, I'm there. So anytime you all want to connect with me, hopefully when we're back in our space, we can do something live or a tour or something. But I know it's, or when Disneyland's open, you guys can go to Disneyland. But just, again, thank you, Kevin, and thank you, everybody, and the Black Alumni Group. Just really proud to have joined you all. So thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Barbara. There was a question in the chat if you would be willing to provide an email address for the students. So you can let us know and we can send that out.
Yeah, okay, I'll pass that on to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you all for joining tonight. We appreciate you giving us your time. I just want to thank everybody again, from the Cal Poly Pomona Alumni Association to the Office of Student Life, for your support in helping us select students to do the interviews. Just thank you all so much. We appreciate it. If you want to follow Cal Poly Pomona Black Alumni and Friends, we do plan to be hosting more events like this. We do health forums and entrepreneurship forums, and this is such an honor to host such amazing speakers tonight on a beautiful Friday night during the pandemic. So just thank you all for your time. We appreciate you for joining us.
All
Oh,
right.
and thank you, Corey, so much. You put forth so much effort and just persistence in getting this event going. So we really want to thank you as well.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you, everyone.
you
Have
for
a
all
good
the-
night.
All right. Nice to meet you, Kevin. Bye.